So-called conversion therapy is a blight upon humanity. It is medical malpractice masquerading as medical benevolence and has killed countless people whilst psychologically scarring many more. Indeed, it's impossible to overstate just how unflinchingly evil said practices are, which is why I, along with any decent human being, support any and all efforts to destroy them, like those we'll be covering in today's video. But first, a quick content warning for the following: chlamydia, child abuse, substance abuse, medical abuse, psychological torture, and suicide. If our work has helped you, please consider supporting us via Patreon so that we can keep the channel running. You can also help us by liking, commenting, and sharing our work on social media. Hi there, my name is Ethel Thurston, she, her, they, them, and we're here to discuss a recent campaign launched in the hopes of ending so-called conversion therapy in India. But wait a second, didn't the Madras High Court ban conversion therapy back in 2021? Well, yes, it did, as covered by us at the time on the trans agenda, with the ruling also preventing trans women from being placed in men's prisons, demanding police undergo sensitivity training, and that schools intervene in instances where parents are not supportive of their LGBT+ child. Returning to the banning of conversion practices, this was followed up in 2022 by the National Medical Commission issuing notice that any and all conversion practices would constitute medical malpractice under the Indian Medical Council's professional conduct, etiquette, and ethics regulations. However, as any victim of crime will tell you, something being prohibited isn't the same as actually putting an end to it, which is where today's campaign comes in. The campaign, simply titled Ban Conversion Therapy, was launched by Misfyt Trans Youth Foundation, a relatively recent startup that began in 2023. Working alongside them is ILGA Asia, Yuva, Girl Up India, Trans Rights Now Collective, Yes We Exist, the GLAD Foundation, the Tapish Foundation, and Safe Access. It is addressed to the National Medical Commission, the Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment, the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare, the Ministry of Women and Child Development, the General Government of India, the Ayush Ministry, and the Rehabilitation Council of India. The campaign lists 3 core demands, which are, quote, 1. Enforce the ban that comprehensively defines and prohibits conversion therapy or practices to change sexual orientation and gender identity, along with definitions of sexual orientation and gender identity. 2. Conduct national, state level, and district level training and awareness programs to sensitize medical, mental health, counseling, and Ayush professionals, as well as government officials including police officers, regarding LGBTQIA+ community. And finally, 3. Provide for a grievance redressal mechanism for conversion therapy against LGBTQIA+ community regarding any misconduct by medical and healthcare professionals. End quote. So quite robust points, with the first one very clearly calling upon the government to enforce the already existing ban in a way that makes clear what constitutes said prohibited practices. This is then followed up with a demand for training and awareness raising, and a demand for direct support for victims harmed by said practices. The letter then continues, acknowledging that, quote, in September 2022, the National Medical Commission, NMC, issued a notice/circular to all state medical councils enlisting conversion therapy as professional misconduct under the Indian Medical Council Professional Conduct, Etiquette and Ethics Regulations 2002. However, the practice of conversion therapy is rampant and goes unreported across the country. There is little to no punitive measures taken against the perpetrators. In 2020, M was checked into a psychiatric ward of a well-known hospital with the approval of their parents to forcibly convert them after they came out to their parents 2 weeks prior. In 2019, A was taken to religious authorities and then to medical practitioners, where they were subjected to all forms of abuse in the name of conversion. Such cases are common. Further, the lack of gender sensitization training of medical professionals continues to cause harm to the LGBTQIA+ community. There is limited information on what constitutes conversion therapy. Parents and religious entities are guilted into extreme decisions without empirical evidence of any success. As a result of the lack of understanding, there is a lack of enforcement of the ban. Conversion therapy is an umbrella term to describe interventions of a wide-ranging nature. What unites them is the common belief that a person's sexual orientation or gender identity can and should be changed. Such practices leave the individual physically abused and emotionally traumatized. Dr. Hema Faror, senior consultant psychiatrist at Our Pets Apollo Spectra Hospital, says, "The first thing is for someone to feel safe with a doctor or a mental health practitioner to come and speak about orientation and other things. There is a need for sexual orientation and gender identity training of medical professionals. This training must be comprehensive and done in consultation with gender and sexual minorities. The limited extent of conversion therapy being declared professional misconduct does not allow for survivors to feel confident about speaking out. As of now, there is no nationwide accessible grievance redressal system for survivors of conversion therapy. We, members of the LGBTQIA+ community and community-based organizations, request the authorities to take swift and stringent measures to ensure the safety of our communities." End quote. Something I noticed with reading this is that there is arguably a fourth demand here, and that's for the current ban to be extended to non-medical settings. The issue being kept to professional misconduct is rather limiting, even looking beyond the lack of repressal systems as noted by Misfyt. It's possible that this will be part of a future campaign, but I can already see the groundwork being laid. The importance of this campaign is in raising awareness to the fact that said practices didn't end overnight back in June of 2021 or even September of 2022. People are still being targeted by said practices, meaning there's a need for the Indian government to step in and put an end to it, as with other forms of medical malpractice. That's why it's so important to discuss this subject. So, if you're Indian or a person living in India, please consider signing the petition. It will be linked at the top of the video description. If everyone else could please share the campaign alongside this video, that would also be appreciated. With that noted, let's move on to some research into the impact of conversion efforts. Keep in mind that I have to make use of the science available to me, and most of that is Anglo-centric, specifically from the US, but there's no reason to think that conversion practices, both clinical and social, are any less harmful to people living in India. With that noted, what do I mean by clinical versus social? Well, conversion practices can take many forms. The one that was outlawed is the clinical variant. This refers to instances in which doctors or people pretending to be doctors engage in organized pseudoscience as a means of curing an LGBT+ person. But this isn't the most common form of conversion practices, those being social. This is when a family or community puts pressure on an LGBT+ person to change who they are. Efforts that can range from simply telling them that they should to very open physical, sexual, and emotional abuse. And I qualify that last part as very open, as even asking an LGBT+ person to become allo-cis-het is emotional violence. That is why a 2019 Trevor Project US survey found that, whilst LGBT+ youth who had never had someone try to convince them to change their gender or sexuality had an attempted suicide rate of 8% in the last year, which is actually 1% lower than the national average, this almost tripled to 23% in those who had someone try to convince them to change their gender or sexuality. This only refers to attempts to convince a person to change their gender or sexuality. This is not organized clinical conversion therapy, which increased attempted suicide from 8% to 42% among all LGBT+ youth, reaching a staggering 57% for trans youth specifically. That's a 5 to 7-fold increase. So both are very clearly bad in that they cause an LGBT+ person immense psychological harm, though the clinical practice is clearly much worse, even though it's not as prevalent. Yet the issues don't desist once an LGBT+ child grows up and leaves home, with a US study from 2009 that compared the long-term impact of growing up in supportive versus rejective households, finding that LGBT+ individuals from households who rejected them on the basis of being LGBT+ were, quote, more than 8 times as likely to have attempted suicide, nearly 6 times as likely to report high levels of depression, more than 3 times as likely to use illegal drugs, and more than 3 times as likely to be at high risk for HIV and sexually transmitted diseases. End quote. This is, in large part, due to internalized hatred resulting in an increase in depression and subsequent suicide attempts, as well as risk-taking behavior like substance abuse and unsafe sex. Focusing down on just gender identity conversion efforts, or GICEs, a 2019 article published in the Journal of the American Medical Association titled Association Between Recalled Exposure to Gender Identity Conversion Efforts and Psychological Distress and Suicide Attempts Among Transgender Adults, consisting of a massive sample size of 27,715 trans adults living in the US, 3,869 of whom had been exposed to conversion attempts, found that, quote, exposure to GICE before age 10 years was significantly associated with several measures of suicidality, including lifetime suicide attempts. End quote. And this is before we even come to the fact that not a single person has ever had their sexuality or gender changed. They might go back into the closet, but that's it. You cannot change a person's gender or sexuality, which, along with the harm said methods cause, is why various medical institutions, such as the UK Council for Psychotherapy, the American Academy of Pediatrics, the American Medical Association, the US Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, and of course, India's National Medical Commission, all agree that conversion practices are unethical. Something to note about these studies coming from the global north is that, in many cases, it is expected for a child to move out once they go to university before getting their own place once they graduate, something that is not necessarily mirrored in Indian culture, at least from my experience in New Delhi. A lot of my adult friends are still living at home, which is completely valid. Like, I personally think we have a fucked up perception in the West, created by the post-war boom and just how easy our grandparents and parents had it, but returning to adults living at their parents' home, this is a benefit in that it offers many young adults greater financial stability, but it also comes at a cost in how it can force young LGBT+ adults to choose between said stability, which Indian society is set up for, or to go it on their own. Add to this economic discrimination, and this forces many LGBT+ people to return to households that are fundamentally unsafe for them because they're LGBT+. That is a key cultural difference that is likely to exacerbate many of the issues seen in these studies, so needs to be kept in mind. But hopefully all this, as many qualifiers as it requires, demonstrates precisely why I, and so many others, including numerous medical institutions around the world, see conversion practices to be a form of abject evil. Hopefully India can rise to the challenge. For contrast, my home country, the UK, has failed to even ban conversion practices. In fact, only last month, the Scottish Parliament shelved a bill to do just that, a bill that had been worked on for more than 2 years and was described, in its current state, as oven-ready. So India is well ahead of us in this regard, which is great considering that we, the UK, were the ones to criminalise being LGBT+ in India. All of which sort of touches upon why I'm a little hesitant to cover Indian stories. Like, I have, clearly, but not nearly as often as stories from the UK and the US. As an LGBT+ foreigner and queer activist who has been living in India since 2017, I often feel like I'm walking a tightrope. On the one hand, I am LGBT+, meaning that LGBT+ rights have an impact on my life as a citizen of this country. On the other hand, I have to recognize that I have a very specific Anglo upbringing and that my understanding of the LGBT+ community as it exists in the UK and Norway does not necessarily line up with said community in India. There are a number of differences, not just in which lived experiences are common, but even the various intricacies of the identities themselves. As such, I only use my voice when I'm absolutely certain that I can offer something of value, as I hope I have achieved with today's video. And to the Misfyt team, in case you're watching this, first, thank you, keep up the good work. Second, I'm around in Delhi, so if you'd ever like to meet up and work on something, give me a buzz. You can also chuck news stories at me if you like. I have quite the wealth of knowledge on queer science. Though, what do you think? What are your thoughts on the campaign? Is there anything you might think to add or stress? What sort of news would you like me to cover in future? Did you notice something I missed? If so, be sure to let me know in the comments down below. And if you appreciate what we do here and want to help keep us running, please consider becoming one of our wonderful patrons who make our work possible. You can also make a one-time donation via PayPal or Super Thanks on YouTube. On that note, we'd just like to thank the following people: Matthew Kovac, Hannah Banghart, Goddess Alita, Sosh Daniels, Flynn, and Higgins the Seagull. And for myself, Adita and Levi, take care now.